June 3, 1944. 0517 hours. Southern outskirts of Corentin, France. A thin layer of dawn fog drifted over the orchard fields, turning every tree into a pale silhouette. The bombed barn beside the orchard sagged under the weight of shattered beams and torn metal, its tin roof half collapsed after a week of artillery harassment. Sergeant Dale Mercer sat inside the frame of the structure, boots planted on broken planks, Springfield M1903 resting across his knee. He watched the ridge line 500 meters out. Runners always appeared there at first light. The American line had held this sector for 19 days. The sector saw 32 confirmed German courier crossings. 27 had reached their command posts alive. Every successful runner meant new coordinates for artillery. Every burst of artillery meant more burials behind the hedgerows. High command wanted accuracy, conservation, and measured discipline. No shots unless the target was clear and inside a confident range window. Standard doctrine rated a sprinting courier at that distance as a low-probability target. Wasting ammunition invited reprimand. Missing fired energy into empty fields. Dale had heard all of it. None of it matched what he had watched for weeks. Dale, 24, farm steel worker from Clay County, Nebraska, had grown up around tin sheds, grain silos, and windbreak barns made from reused steel sheets. Sound behaved clean across metal. Echo bounced sharp. Angles mattered. As a boy he learned to drop crows hiding on the far side of the grain shed by firing a small distance off and letting the ricochet strike the target. Farmers improvised. Farmers adapted. Farmers solved problems. The solution never cared about paperwork. He ran the numbers during the first week in France. A courier appeared at a speed near 7 meters per second. Range varied between 400 and 600 meters. Firing directly offered a narrow hit window. Dale tracked 11 runners. He fired at 5. He hit 0. His squad hit 0. None of them had equipment to match the task. The men cursed the ridge every night. He mapped the orchard barns. 10 structures made from local tin roof sheets. 4 collapsed. 6 intact but damaged. He tested a sheet during a lull, resting the metal on a broken beam, firing a single round into a controlled angle. The deflection whined off into the empty grove. He adjusted the sheet. He fired again. Each angle changed the path. Behind the barn he lined up 2 broken beams and cut a segment of roof panel at 40 degrees. The reflected shot kicked out left and down with a predictable curve. He ran the calculations again until he found a consistent arc. The arc would place a deflected round into the corridor where couriers sprinted. He built the rig quietly. A single tin sheet. 1 brace of wood. 1 rope tie. Nothing complex. Nothing heavy. It stood beside his rifle like a crude angled shield. No holes cut. No moving parts. Only a surface that shaped sound and metal the same way farm sheds had shaped his childhood shots. He tested real rounds at dusk. Dry branches 50 meters out cracked apart by a glancing pass. He adjusted again. Then again. He logged the angles in a small notebook. He never sent a report. He did not intend to. June 8. 0521 hours. Dawn. Fog low. Light weak. Movement on the ridge. 1 courier. Same pattern. Same speed. Same slight left lean the Germans taught their runners, minimizing profile. Dale exhaled slow. He fired. The shot hit the angled tin plate. The ricochet curved across the orchard. The courier jerked, stumbled, and fell flat. The ridge stayed empty for the next hour. His squad watched but said nothing. They recognized results. They respected results. War rewarded outcomes, not rules. The next morning Dale repeated the setup. Another courier appeared. Another angled shot. Second kill. 2 days later he hit 2 more, 1 at dawn, 1 at sunset. 4 runners lost in 48 hours forced German command to delay 2 coordinated pushes. American artillery reports confirmed fewer incoming fire missions in the sector. Dale's squad slept without ground shaking for the first time in a week. Word spread informally. Small notes. Quick nods. Quiet interest. Not official. Never official. Improvisation lived in shadows. Soldiers copied what worked. Soldiers ignored what killed them. A private from a nearby platoon used a broken panel from a tractor shed. A corporal in the northern orchard used a church beam to tilt a metal sheet. Tin plates appeared behind collapsed vehicles, in ruined house frames under half-burned rafters. Nobody documented anything but angles gleamed in sunlight everywhere. The ridge grew quiet. Then command noticed the strange metal fixtures scattered through the orchard. They saw bent tin sheets, Improvised braces, strange placements near rifle positions. They examined Dale's rig. They called it unsanctioned, unsafe, reckless. They banned all deflection plates. They tore them from barns and sheds. They issued a formal notice threatening charges. The morning after the ban, 2 couriers lived. One reached his post. Artillery arrived within 30 minutes. 9 Americans died. Dale listened to the burial detail at sundown. He said nothing. He watched the glow of artillery flashes from distant fields. Doctrine demanded obedience. Reality demanded solutions. The ridge would send more runners at dawn. He knew what happened when they reached their post. He knew who paid for it. Men whose names did not survive the morning. At 0230 hours he walked into the barn with a lantern hooded low. He quietly refit the angled plate. He tied one replaced rope. He aligned the sheet at the same 40-degree mark. He set his rifle on the beam. He waited for dawn. The orchard lay silent except for the wind cutting through broken rafters. Dale sat alone in the barn, back straight, breathing steady. His squad slept in foxholes outside, unaware that the ban did not exist for him anymore. Rules had cost 9 lives. Engels had saved 4. He chose Engels. June 12, 1944. 0514 hours. The air felt colder than the week before. Dawn light pushed through the fog in faint gray beams. German supply lines had shifted after their earlier losses, but the ridge remained their fastest corridor for message runners. Every officer on both sides knew that control of the Corentin fields depended on speed, communication, and fire discipline. Runners kept the German artillery synchronized. Kill the runners and the guns slowed. Slow the guns and American lines held. Dale checked the rope tension on the plate. The surface gleamed faintly under the dim light. The angle remained fixed at exactly 40 degrees. He had measured 3 times during the night with a small carpenter square he carried from home. He trusted angles more than regulations. A distant clatter on the ridge signaled movement. Dale lifted his rifle. Through the scope he saw a faint silhouette. The courier sprinted low, weaving through gaps in the broken hedgerow. Dale read the speed. 7 meters per second. Same posture. Same evasive rhythm. The Germans trained their runners to angle shoulders forward to reduce strike surface. It helped against direct shots. It meant nothing to a ricochet. He exhaled. The world narrowed to a single line between steel and dawn. He fired. The rifle cracked. The shot hit the tin plate with a sharp metallic snap. The deflected round curved across the orchard with a controlled "What?" A second later the courier jerked violently and fell sideways into the tall grass. Silence followed. Not a word from the foxholes. Not a rustle in the orchard. Only the soft echo rolling across the collapsed barn walls. Dale lowered his rifle. He untied the rope. He slid the tin plate under a broken beam. He walked out into the orchard as if nothing had happened. His squad saw the runner's body through binoculars. They looked at Dale but asked nothing. The lieutenant arrived later that morning, found the courier dead, and muttered something about improved marksmanship. No questions. No accusations. Nobody wanted reports that contradicted the ban. Dead enemy runners were easier to explain than unconventional physics. Dale spent the next 4 days without firing another angled shot. German command adjusted their routes. Couriers avoided the ridge, choosing longer, slower paths. The delay affected artillery response times. American units used the gap to reposition machine gun nests and mortar teams. Casualty numbers across the sector dropped by half. Some officers credited improved communication. Others cited weather. A few credited luck. None credited a ricochet rig built from scrap metal and farm knowledge. By June 18 the ban remained in effect, but its influence weakened. Soldiers improvised quietly. Metal sheets leaned behind ruined fences. Angled boards appeared near sniper hides. Every field unit understood the pattern. When rules failed, innovation filled the gap. No one filed any paperwork. The phenomenon spread like wind through wheat, invisible but powerful. German records later revealed confusion among forward units. Runners feared exposed ground. Officers hesitated to send messages across the ridge. Some attempted night crossings. Others used bicycles instead of runners. Many messages arrived late, incomplete, or not at all. The German battalion east of Corentin misdirected artillery for 2 days, firing on empty fields while American troops advanced 300 meters without resistance. The collapse of those lines traced back to disrupted courier routes. Dale remained in the orchard barn each morning. He carried the plate with him but kept it hidden. The ban stayed official and unchanged. Enforcement grew weaker each day. The lieutenant no longer inspected the barn. Higher officers assumed compliance. The war moved too fast for them to monitor every small detail. 2 nights later, distant artillery shook the orchard. Reports came through that German forces attempted a coordinated push south of Corentin. They failed. Their messages had arrived 40 minutes late. Dale heard the news without reaction. He focused only on the ridge, the fog, and the next dawn. June 21st. 0509 hours. Light crawled across the orchard. A runner appeared again. This one moved faster than the others. His path angled sharply into the trees. He carried a satchel strapped tight to his torso. Dale raised his rifle. He did not fire. The runner stayed out of the known corridor. Out of the arc, out of any predictable rebound path. Dale maintained discipline. No wasted shots. The runner reached the distant hedgerow and disappeared. 30 minutes later, American forward observers saw the first incoming shells. 2 bursts landed near the northern orchard. No casualties. A third struck a trench line 70 meters west. 1 wounded. None killed. The old familiar bitterness returned. Runners who reached their post always sent death back with them. Dale spent midday repairing his tin plate. Shrapnel from earlier shelling had bent one corner. He straightened it with a hammer and reshaped the bracing wood with a field knife. The angle remained unchanged. He etched a small mark into the beam where the plate had sat before. Consistency mattered more than strength. The plate needed precision, not armor. That night, squads from 3 different platoons visited the barn. They studied the rig in silence. None touched it. None asked Dale to explain it. They only observed the angle, nodded, and left. The orchard filled with improvised knowledge. War taught faster than manuals. By June 24, German command grew desperate. Their runners had lost 9 men in 2 weeks across a small sector that traditionally saw minimal resistance from American marksmen. Their artillery fire became erratic. Units operated without clear coordination. Officers argued in their dugouts. Some sent 2 runners at once. Others sent none. Confusion radiated outward. On the American side, the foxholes grew quieter. Men rested longer. Casualty reports declined sharply. Supplies arrived without disruption. A medic noted fewer shrapnel wounds. A chaplain conducted fewer graveside readings. No officer traced the change to the orchard barn. The system simply worked and nobody questioned why. Everything shifted on June 26. June 26, 1944. 0503 hours. The fog was thin that morning, almost absent. A pale red glow rose behind the ridge, cutting long shadows across the orchard fields. Dale sat in the barn doorway, rifle already set on its brace. The tin plate rested beside him, polished by repeated handling. He checked the angle twice. The plate felt colder than usual. He tightened the rope until it hummed under tension. His squad moved quietly in the foxholes outside. They felt the shift in the air. Every man learned to recognize certain mornings. Calm before movement. Stillness before contact. The ridge stayed empty for several minutes. No birds. No distant engines. Only wind sliding over broken tin. At 0509 hours, a figure sprinted from behind a shattered stone wall. Fast. The runner crossed open ground with a speed Dale had rarely seen. His uniform bore signs of urgency, not caution. Dust sprayed under his boots. The satchel on his hips swung violently with each stride. This man carried something important. Possibly coordinates for a counterattack. Possibly updated artillery grids. Possibly orders for an immediate shift in German defensive lines. Dale locked onto the figure. The runner moved inside the known corridor. The distance was nearly identical to the earlier kills. Angle matched. Speed matched. The shot required timing but not luck. He raised the rifle. Breath controlled. Scope steady. The plate stood positioned at 40 degrees. He fired. The crack echoed across the orchard. The shot hit the tin plate with the familiar snap. The ricochet curved through the morning air with a sharp metallic whine. The arc crossed the field. It struck the runner clean in the ribs. The man collapsed instantly and slid across the dirt. The orchard fell silent again. Dale exhaled once. The squad watched from foxholes, unblinking. They knew what they had witnessed. Another deflected shot. Another courier gone. Another artillery report delayed. Dale packed the plate away, tying it under the barn beam before the lieutenant arrived. His lieutenant arrived breathless 10 minutes later, binoculars in hand. He scanned the ridge. He looked down the orchard. He examined Dale's rifle position without stepping inside the barn. He never asked how Dale hit the runner at that angle. He asked only one question. Is he dead? Dale nodded. Good, the lieutenant said. We need a morning without shells. By noon reports filtered through the company. German forces expected reinforcements but could not coordinate their artillery. American units pushed 300 meters forward with minimal resistance. Machine gun crews captured 2 bunkers. Engineers cleared a minefield unchallenged. The entire sector shifted in one day. Somewhere behind the lines a major wrote a glowing report about improved accuracy among riflemen. The numbers favored a harmless explanation. Nobody wrote about ricochet physics. Dale spent the afternoon reinforcing the barn's remaining beams. He hammered loose planks into place. He tested another angle with a spare roof sheet. The second angle performed poorly and produced unpredictable rebound. He returned to the original 40-degree rig. It worked. It always worked. He had no interest in improving perfection. As the days passed, the orchard became a quiet sanctuary compared to the burning towns beyond. Distant gunfire rolled across the fields but rarely touched the barn. American troops expanded the perimeter. German command faltered. One captured German corporal, interrogated 2 weeks later, complained that the Corentin runners suffered unnatural losses from angles we could not predict. The interrogator dismissed it as battlefield exaggeration. Dale never heard the report. He continued his routine without deviation. July arrived. Heat replaced fog. Tin plates baked under sunlight. Metal turned hot enough to burn unloved hands. Morning still delivered runners but fewer than before. Orders shifted. German forces favored armored carriers for communication. Couriers moved behind heavier cover. The open field became less traveled. Dale waited in the barn at dawn each day. Some mornings the ridge stayed empty. Others delivered a single runner who kept low and cautious. By mid-July the corridor had gone unused for nearly 36 hours. The orchard squad finally slept without tension. Then German forces attempted one final push. July 17, 1944. 0506 hours. Shadows stretched long across the grass. Dale had positioned the tin plate again despite no runners for 2 days. Instinct guided him. He trusted patterns. War rarely changed rhythm without warning. At 0511 hours 3 silhouettes appeared at once. 3 runners sprinting together, spread 20 meters apart, moving faster than any previous courier. Their pace exceeded 8 meters per second. All carried satchels. All ran with urgency. The Germans needed contact with their artillery fast. Too fast. Something significant had shifted in their northern lines. Dale had a single plate. A single prepared angle. A single shot ready. His mind calculated quickly. The center runner crossed the deflection arc first. The angle predicted a curve toward his left side. The timing margin narrowed with each step. Direct fire remained possible but unreliable at that distance. The ricochet offered stronger odds. He fired. The bullet hit the plate with a violent strike. The rebound curved. It crossed the field. It clipped the center runner in the lower chest. He collapsed instantly. The second runner swerved and dove behind a small rise. The third vanished into thick grass. Dale chambered a second round but did not fire. The angle no longer aligned. The arc shifted. Firing again risked stray rounds hitting American positions. Discipline mattered more than ambition. 30 minutes later American forward observers detected German artillery moving erratically. Some shells landed far off target. Others hit empty orchards. None struck the intended defensive line. The push collapsed before midday. Prisoners later reported their messages never reached the artillery officers. The deflection shot had altered the timing by 30 seconds. That 30 seconds saved 2 American platoons from being caught in open fields. Dale said nothing when the lieutenant congratulated the squad for their excellent dawn fire. He only cleaned his rifle, folded the tin plate into his pack, and prepared for the next morning. 3 days later the band resurfaced. A captain inspected field positions. He found tin plates hidden across the orchard, floorboards propped at strange angles, metal scraps shaped into improvised rigs. He ordered them destroyed again. His reasoning echoed the first ban. Unsafe. Unpredictable. Non-standard. This time soldiers complied only while he watched. The moment he left, rigs reappeared. Tin sheets returned. Angles were measured again. Men trusted what kept them alive. Dale operated silently. The system needed no praise. It needed no approval. It only needed the next dawn. By late July the orchard sector stabilized. The field stayed quiet. The ridge delivered fewer silhouettes. The German command structure struggled under disrupted communication lines. Their artillery officers operated blind. Mortar teams fired irregular patterns. Forward units moved with hesitation. American troops expanded their perimeter another 400 meters without heavy resistance. Sergeant Dale Mercer knew the rhythm of war could shift without warning. He kept the tin plate in a small canvas wrap behind the barn wall. He checked the angle every evening. He kept the rope dry. He never trusted quiet fields. He waited for patterns to break. July 23, 1944. 0515 hours. Dawn approached without fog. A clear sky stretched wide across the orchard. The ridge looked sharp in the early light. Dale scanned the horizon through his scope. Nothing moved. No dust. No shadows. No runners. The stillness unsettled him more than gunfire. He lowered the rifle. He listened to the wooden frame creak under a soft breeze. The barn smelled of dry metal and sun-baked earth. He had sat in this same position for nearly 7 weeks. The orchard became a second home. The tin plate became an extension of his rifle. The angle became a law he trusted more than military doctrine. At 0523 hours, faint movement flickered near the ridge. Not a runner. A spotter. The man wore binoculars and scanned the orchard with steady discipline. German forward spotters rarely exposed themselves without intention. This one crouched near a broken stone wall and signaled behind him. More movement followed. 2 couriers appeared, but they did not sprint. They moved slowly, crouched low. They studied the field like men who expected danger from every angle. Dale understood the shift. The Germans suspected something unusual. Too many losses in one corridor. Too many unexplained impacts. Their officers likely blamed hidden snipers or unpredictable ricochet zones. They did not know the exact source. They knew only that their runners died in open fields. They now adapted. The 2 couriers split right and left. Their paths avoided the arc entirely. Both stayed low behind the hedgerows. Their slow approach kept them outside Dale's angle. The tin plate had limits. The shot required the target to pass through a narrow window. The Germans had learned to avoid it. Dale held his fire. Discipline mattered. One reckless shot could reveal the trick. The Germans might study the deflected path. They might locate the barn. They might destroy the orchard sector with direct fire. Dale followed his rule. If the arc did not align, he waited. Both couriers disappeared behind the ridge. 30 minutes later, American listening posts detected faint German radio chatter. New artillery coordinates moved through their channels. The first shells landed far from the orchard but close enough to shake the barn. Soil rained down from the rafters. Dale stood calmly and brushed dust from his sleeves. The artillery barrage ended quickly. The Germans lacked stable coordination. The last shells hit an empty field. No casualties. The orchard survived with nothing more than scattered debris. At midday, the lieutenant visited the barn. He glanced at Dale's rifle, then at the beams above. He spoke quietly. The men sleep better when the ridge stays quiet. Dale nodded but said nothing. You did something here, the lieutenant continued. I do not know what. I do not need to know. But the numbers changed. They changed after you arrived. The lieutenant walked away without turning back. The next morning delivered rain. Heavy summer rain soaked the orchard. Tin plates rang softly under the drops. Mud formed in deep patches. Visibility dropped to 60 meters. Runners stopped using the fields entirely. No movement crossed the ridge. Every squad in the sector relaxed. Even the officers stopped checking the barns. The quiet lasted 3 days. July 29, 1944. 0518 hours. The rain stopped. Fog clung low to the ground. German units moved again. Dale sat in his usual position. Rifle ready. Plate angled. Rope tight. He breathed slow and steady. At 0520 hours, one runner emerged from the fog. The silhouette moved differently from past couriers. Shoulders hunched. Steps lighter. Speed slower. The satchel strapped to his back looked heavier than standard. Through the scope, Dale recognized the pattern. This runner carried documents, not artillery coordinates. Documents meant strategic orders. Possibly withdrawal maps. Possibly reinforcement schedules. Possibly something critical to German high command. The runner stayed cautious. He paused behind a small dip in the field. He checked the ridge. He adjusted direction. Then he entered the arc. The position aligned perfectly. Distance stable. Visibility narrow but adequate. Dale raised his rifle. He fired. The round struck the tin plate. The ricochet curved with a faint metallic cry. It disappeared into the fog. A second later a muffled thud followed. The runner fell face down in wet grass. Dale saw the silhouette collapse. He lowered the rifle. The field stayed motionless. No other figures appeared. The fog thickened around the body. Dawn arrived slowly. American scouts later searched the field and recovered the satchel. It contained maps marking German fallback positions for an expected withdrawal near Saint-Denis. The information reached American command before noon. It shaped the next 2 weeks of operations. It allowed American units to adjust their advance routes and avoid fortified pockets. It saved an estimated 70 men. The Orchard Squad never learned those details. They only heard that valuable documents were found. Dale remained silent. His squad respected his silence. As August approached, the German lines thinned. Their forces retreated steadily. Artillery fire weakened. Machine gun nests abandoned positions overnight. American troops advanced north with growing confidence. Dale stayed in the orchard barn out of routine. The ridge offered fewer shadows each day. Couriers vanished entirely. The deflection rig sat unused but always ready. The war moved beyond the orchard, but the orchard held the memory of every shot. On August 12 the captain arrived with orders to relocate the squad to a new sector. The orchard would soon be abandoned as front lines shifted. Dale stood alone inside the barn one last time. He ran his hand along the tin plate. He measured the angle with his carpenter square. Exactly 40 degrees, unchanged after 7 weeks of use. He folded the plate slowly. He wrapped it in canvas. He placed it inside his pack. No one asked why a rifleman carried a sheet of tin with precise measurements etched into the edge. Dale stepped out of the barn. The orchard lay quiet behind him. The ridge stood empty. The dawn offered no runners. The barn beams held their shape despite weeks of artillery and weather. The tin roof glimmered faintly in the morning light. He walked away without looking back. The new sector lay northwest of Saint-Denis, a patchwork of hedgerows, narrow lanes and low stone farms that had changed hands several times. The air carried the smell of burned crops. Fields lay torn with tank tracks. Every tree seemed stripped by shrapnel. Dale's squad arrived on August 14. The front had pushed forward, but pockets of resistance remained. German communication grew frantic as their retreat accelerated. Dale found no orchard barn here. No tin roof sheets. No familiar angles. The terrain worked against his method. Hedgerows blocked long lines of sight. Stone walls absorbed ricochet instead of shaping it. The physics changed with every field. Dale adapted quickly. He studied the ruined farms. He searched for metal. He searched for angles. 3 days into the new assignment, a sergeant from another platoon approached him quietly. "You're the man from Corentin," he said. Dale kept his face expressionless. "I was stationed there." The sergeant nodded. "Our runners lived because your runners died." Dale did not respond. "Command does not want to hear about it," the sergeant continued. "But the men do. They heard stories. They talk about a ricochet shot that walks sideways." Dale shook his head once. "No shot walks. It only follows angles. And you know those angles better than anyone." Dale said nothing more. The sergeant walked away. The hedgerow sector demanded new tactics. German forces still relied on couriers when radios failed. They sprinted along narrow lanes bordered by stone. They carried orders for delaying maneuvers and artillery fallback positions. The tin plate rig from the orchard could not function in tight corridors. Dale needed a different approach. But he kept the plate in his pack. Farmers carried tools even when the field changed. The habit stayed. On August 20th, American intelligence intercepted fragments of German messages suggesting a counterattack near Saint-Denis. The communication quality was poor. Runners remained the primary method. Analysts struggled to piece together the timing. Dale heard the briefings and understood the pattern. When German high command faced collapse, they relied on speed. When they relied on speed, they sent runners. When they sent runners, angles mattered again. That evening Dale scouted an abandoned shed near a road bend west of his position. The roof lay mostly intact. The tin panels had fewer bullet holes than expected. He ran his hand across one sheet. Solid, clean surface. It reminded him of home. He checked the nails. He tested the resonance with a light tap. The metal rang true. He inspected the interior. A beam leaned at an angle that matched roughly 40 degrees. He rested his tin plate against it. The alignment matched almost perfectly. The shed sat 20 meters off the narrow lane used by German couriers. The lane opened into a small clearing before cutting behind a stone wall. The clearing created a brief window. A runner sprinting through it would appear for only 3 seconds. That 3-second interval defined the opportunity. Dale reinforced the beam with 2 short boards. He tied the tin plate with new rope. He etched a fresh measurement line into the wood. The shed became a new barn. The lane became a new corridor. The angle remained the same. At dawn on August 21st, the first runner appeared. He moved fast. Faster than any runner Dale had seen in this sector. He carried a small message tube instead of a satchel. Dale recognized priority communication. The runner crossed the clearing. Dale fired. The shot struck the plate with a metallic cry. The rebound curved left and struck the runner behind the shoulder. He fell without sound. Dale watched through the scope. The body remained still. The lane stayed empty. The silence hung heavy. Over the next 4 days, Dale killed 3 more couriers using the same shed. Each kill forced German communication deeper into disarray. American units reported lighter artillery fire. German counterattacks weakened. Their coordination fractured. Then an unexpected shift occurred. On August 26, a German patrol discovered the shed. They studied the angled beam. They examined the strange rope marks. They found the tin panel leaning against the wall. They recognized the traces of a ricochet setup. They reported the discovery to their officers. The officers suspected a trap. They ordered the shed destroyed by mortar fire. At 1,440 hours, 3 mortar shells landed directly on the structure, which shattered. Tin panels flew across the lane. Smoke billowed upward. Dale watched from a hedgerow and realized the end of his second rig had come. The shed collapsed into burning fragments. The angle died with the structure. That evening the lieutenant approached him. "Was that yours?" Dale answered quietly. "Yes." "You understand we cannot mention it?" "Yes." "And you understand why it mattered?" "Yes." The lieutenant nodded once and walked away. No reprimand. No praise. Only acknowledgement. The following morning German runners changed routes again. This time they adapted correctly. They chose paths with no shed, no clearing, no exposed bend. The new routes favored cover. Ricochet physics could not reach them. Dale accepted the change. Every tactic lived until the enemy learned its shape. The orchard plate had lasted 7 weeks. The shed plate lasted 6 days. Both served their purpose. By early September, German lines collapsed in full retreat toward the Seine. American units advanced without pause. Radio communication improved. Couriers vanished entirely. The war moved on. Dale carried the tin plate one last time in his pack. He checked the etched angle numbers each night. He cleaned the metal with a rag to prevent rust. The plate remained warm under his hand. It held the quiet memory of every deflected shot. On September 9, orders arrived sending his company to relieve another unit near Le Mesnil. They marched through fields marked by abandoned German equipment. Burned vehicles lined the roads. Civilians emerged from hiding. The sound of war shifted into distance. The orchard remained behind him. The shed remained in ashes. The ridge remained quiet forever. But the angle stayed alive. By late September the front had moved far beyond the towns where Dale had worked his quiet craft. The distant thunder of artillery faded week by week. German runners disappeared from the landscape, replaced by rumors of retreating columns and desperate defensive pockets. Communication across the battlefield shifted to radios and armored messengers. The war's shape changed, but soldiers remembered the days when messages lived or died on the speed of one man crossing open ground. Dale's company reached Le Mesnil on September 14. The area looked different from the orchard and hedgerow sectors. The land sat flatter, dotted with wide farms and stone buildings that had survived months of shelling. Trees grew in thin lines instead of dense clusters. The air smelled of harvested grain and turned soil. War touched the region, but not with the intensity that had burned other towns to ashes. The squad settled into a stable defensive line. No ridge. No corridor. No dawn silhouettes. The men slept deeper. They carried fewer wounds. They asked fewer questions about where artillery would fall next. In quiet moments they talked about home, not angles or tin plates. Dale listened, contributing rarely but always present. One afternoon the lieutenant approached him while he cleaned his rifle near a stone trough. "Engineering Corps wants field reports," he said. Dale continued cleaning his bolt. "What type of reports?" "Unusual battlefield improvisations. Things that helped, things that failed." Dale paused. "And what do you want me to tell them?" The lieutenant rested his hand on the trough. "Whatever you choose. You owe them nothing." Dale nodded once. The lieutenant walked away. That night Dale opened his pack and removed the folded tin plate. The canvas wrap carried dirt from 2 sectors. The surface held faint dents, burn marks, and the scratches of 7 weeks of work. He traced the etched 40-degree line with his thumb. A simple angle. A simple idea. Something no manual described. Something no officer approved. Something that saved men whose names he never learned. He thought about writing a report. He thought about describing the physics, the angles, the rebound arcs, the distances, the timing. He thought about diagrams. He thought about the orchard. He thought about the shed. He thought about the 9 men who died after the first ban. He thought about the dozens who lived because he ignored it. Then he folded the tin plate again and set it aside. The war pushed forward. American units advanced into Belgium. German forces crumbled under pressure. Dale's squad saw less combat and more routine patrols. Couriers never reappeared. The orchard remained a memory locked behind shifting front lines. In early October, heavy rain soaked the region. Trenches flooded. Roads turned to mud. The company dug new defensive positions in higher ground. Dale spent long hours reinforcing walls, repairing beams, and shaping shelters against the elements. His hands worked with the same precision he used on barns back home. Every board placed at an angle. Every nail driven with purpose. One evening as they rested in a half-collapsed farmhouse, a private asked him a question. "Sergeant, they say you once hit a runner by bouncing a shot off a roof. Is that true?" The room fell quiet. Dale looked up from the piece of wood he was trimming. "No," he said calmly. "The roof did the work." The men chuckled softly and said nothing more. Dale did not elaborate. He had no reason to. Soldiers needed legends to survive long campaigns. Legends carried weight, not details. What mattered to Dale was that men lived because angles existed, not because his name did. By November the war took him further from the places where his shadow mattered. Thick forests, frozen hills, towns where communication traveled by radio instead of runners. His plate stayed in his pack until it became unnecessary weight. He kept it anyway. A reminder of a season when the battlefield bent to a simple idea. The last time Dale used the angle for any purpose came during a late November artillery barrage. A beam above him cracked under the shockwave. The structure risked collapse. He pulled the tin plate from his pack, angled it under a leaning post and reinforced the brace. The roof held. The men inside survived the night. None of them knew what supported the beam. None needed to. By winter the war moved past the point where improvisation decided survival. Massed armor, heavy artillery, and sweeping air support defined the final months. Couriers no longer sprinted through fog at dawn. Their era ended. The orchard angle faded into forgotten details. Dale finished his service in the spring of 1945. He returned home to Nebraska on a quiet afternoon with no ceremony. He stepped onto familiar soil. He smelled grain dust. He heard the wind sliding across tin roofs. He walked to the family shed behind his parents' house and placed the folded plate on a workbench. He opened a welding shop months later. He repaired farm equipment. He built grain chutes. He fixed broken roofs. Customers praised his precision with angles. They never learned where he learned it. Dale never told them. He raised 2 boys. He taught them how to shape metal, how to listen to its voice, how to trust a steady hand. He never mentioned Corentin. He never mentioned the orchard. He never mentioned dawn or fog or a ridge where runners died. When neighbors asked about the war, he spoke briefly about mud and weather and long marches. Nothing more. In 1958, an engineering review committee published a small internal memo about deflection physics in battlefield environments. The memo referenced field observations recorded by unnamed personnel during the Normandy campaign. It recommended future testing of controlled ricochet rigs for specialized situations. The memo circulated quietly. No wide adoption followed. The war had moved on. The world changed. No one connected the memo to a quiet sergeant from Nebraska. Many years later, long after the orchards had grown back and the barns had been rebuilt, a tourist walking through the fields near Corentin found a small sliver of tin half buried in dirt. Weathered. Bet. Etched faintly with a straight line. He turned it into a local museum. The curator placed it in a drawer labeled Miscellaneous Scrap, Normandy Farms. It sat there for decades, unremarkable. Yet men lived because that scrap once angled the path of a bullet at dawn.